So the big story right now is the Democrats trying to get Trump impeached. And the Democrats are saying that Trump needs to be impeached because what he did with the president of Ukraine is illegal. So essentially, what happened was that Donald Trump contacted the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and he said, listen, we're not going to give you U.S. aid that would help Ukraine's military unless the Ukrainian government investigates the involvement of Joe Biden's son, Hunter, with a Ukrainian natural gas company called Burisma. Now, for a president to threaten a country with withdrawing U.S. aid unless it investigates a U.S. citizen in order to win an election, yes, that's pretty nefarious. Yes, that is obviously illegal. But even if this is all true, even if what these hearings are revealing are true, the reality is that Donald Trump is not going to get impeached. It's just not going to happen. Remember all of the dirt the Republicans had about Obama? And they were saying, look at what happened with Benghazi, and these American citizens were murdered, and a U.S. ambassador was murdered. And what happened with Obama, right? There were Republicans saying, oh, Obama needs to be impeached. What happened with Obama? Nothing. They said, oh, Bill Clinton was impeached, but he stayed for the rest of his term. He stayed as president for the rest of his term. Nothing happened. And this is why I say that this whole thing really is just one big distraction. That's really what this is. Now, let me give you guys an example of what I mean. They say that what Trump did was illegal, and therefore he deserves impeachment. Okay, fine. But there was a president that did something far worse than what they are saying Trump did. Let's go back to Ronald Reagan. Let's go back to the Reagan administration. The Tehran U.S. Embassy crisis. These American citizens were held hostage for quite a long time, and it was the biggest story in the world, right? American citizens in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran held hostage by terrorists, anti-American terrorists. Well, what happened during that time? They say, oh, look, Ronald Reagan, he became president, and oh, the Iranians were so terrified. They let the hostages go, and that was the big story, right? Till this day, you have conservatives, right-wingers, Republicans saying this. They repeat this trope, and that's what it is. It's this whole trope. It's this common misconception, like, oh, Reagan put his balls on the table, and woo, the Iranians were so terrified that they freed the American hostages. That's not what happened. That's what they say happened, right? That's a very common idea. It's a very common conventional view, but that's not what happened. And I've talked about this before. If you look at the work of Adi Ben Menashe, look him up. Adi Ben Menashe wrote a whole book about this. He has talked about this numerous times. He was an Israeli arms dealer. He was very, very entrenched in the... Actually, no, he was not an Israeli arms dealer. Adi Ben Menashe was... he was deep within the Israeli government and deep within Israeli intelligence. And Adi Ben Menashe was involved in the negotiations. He was involved in that whole situation in which you had negotiations between the Americans and the Iranians. And what Adi Ben Menashe revealed was that the United States essentially used the hostage crisis as a way to sell arms to the Iranians and to help Ronald Reagan win an election, to help Ronald Reagan look really, really, really good. And they essentially told the Iranians, the Americans essentially told the Iranians, you free the hostages, but only right after Reagan wins. That way Reagan looks like a hero. And in return, we will allow you to have weapons deals with us and also with the Israeli government. And that's exactly what happened. Now, they were saying, oh, this is just one big conspiracy theory, but it's not a coincidence that after the hostages were freed, all of a sudden these huge arms deals were done between the Americans and the Iranians, and between the Israelis and the Iranians. And the Iranians got tens of millions of dollars worth of weapons from the Israelis. Of course, they paid for all of it. And also with the Americans, right? They had all these huge arms deals with the U.S. military-industrial complex. And that was done by Reagan's people. Now, Reagan said, oh, this never happened, but he was lying. And there was all sorts of information that got leaked out, or that was eventually revealed, that indicated that this was true. This was not a conspiracy theory. And there were even 2 Iranian arms dealers who were involved. They were Cyrus Hashemi and his brother Jamshid Hashemi. And they were both major Iranian arms dealers, and they were heavily involved in this whole negotiation situation between the Americans and the Israelis and the Iranians. This all came out. And even in the, I want to say, early 90s, there was a document that came out talking about all of this. How there were arms deals that were agreed upon, and in exchange the hostages would be freed, all that stuff. It's all there. And that's far worse than what Trump has supposedly done. And if Reagan wasn't punished for all of this, right? If Reagan wasn't impeached for all of this, then what makes you think Trump is going to get impeached? This is why I say it's just one big distraction. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.